All right, glad to see each one of you. Good to see Jerry back with us on a Wednesday night. Excited about that, yeah? So this is obviously, we've come to the end of this series, thank God. So we are coming to the end. This is number 12 in the Sacred Geometry and Symbolism that we've studied. And this will be the final episode of this series. Now, if you're watching online and you don't see, I'm going to show a few videos tonight. If you don't see all the videos, it's because we had to clip it again for YouTube. Now, what's interesting is the videos I've been showing on this in this class, and we've been putting it on YouTube, and YouTube says, hey, you're violating our community guidelines because what you're showing is copyrighted. I said, okay. But where I'm getting these Grammy copyrighted videos is off of somebody's personal YouTube channel. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. It's all right for them to have the full thing on theirs, no big deal. But guys like me, if I just show a snippet of it, nope, that's a community guideline problem. And so if YouTube has a problem with it, fine, I could care less. But at the end of the day, we're going to show it. I'm not editing and putting stuff down at the bottom anymore. At the end of the day, if you don't see the video online, come to class. If you don't live in the state, move here. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. So we're going to put it on. Now, here's what's going to happen. We are, after tonight, we're going to be on pause until the 1st of August. The second Wednesday night in August will be Alan Shelby. He's doing the history of the Independent Baptist Church. Which is, I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome. And so he's going to do that. It's going to be a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and then that following Wednesday, so it'll be the third Wednesday night in the month of August, will be Rodney doing a series on the rapture. Soon as Rodney's done with his, I will start the verse-by-verse study of the book of Revelation, and we'll go from there. If you're in my Sunday school class, you watch reruns anyway, so get over it. But anyway, that's where we're at. Symbolism and Sacred Geometry, number 12. And we've talked about, we're in this sub-series of specifically Hollywood. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it tonight with Hollywood. But Francis Bacon said that it's easier to teach your audience with entertainment than lectures. And Manly P. Hall, our man, who is the main writer for all Masonic Freemasonry, is the guy who says, look, here's what he says. Symbolism is the language of the mysteries. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate to each other the thoughts which transcend the limits of language. And so they've realized the best way to get our hidden wisdom and knowledge from generation to generation, from language to language, is by putting it in the symbolism. Then they realized the best way to get that symbolism out is through entertainment. And that's why we've been dealing with Hollywood. Now, to understand, I'll come back to that. Tonight, we're going to pick up a little on MK Ultra. And the reason being is because you got to sit here and wonder, like, why does Beyonce and Lady Gaga and Katy Perry, why do they all act a certain way? Well, you have to understand what MK Ultra is. And in order to understand MK Ultra, you have to first start with Operation Paperclip. So when the Germans supposedly lost World War II, and I use that word specifically supposedly, when they lost, the Russians and the Americans took all those scientists that were working on rockets, when they were working on all kinds of other medical issues. And what happened is, through Operation Paperclip, they brought those doctors into this country. Now imagine that. We had to go over there and fight to win a war that they were fighting against us on. And since we won, hey, by the way, we're going to take the smart guys and bring them over here and have them work for us now. And that's what went down under what's known as Operation Paperclip. And it's not actually conspiracy theory. You can look all this stuff up. And guys like Werner von Braun and Arthur Rudolph, these guys are the guys who created NASA and the rockets and the how we supposedly got to the moon and all that stuff. Now, One of the things these guys were doing, and a great book on this is by Annie Jacobson, who's an expert on this subject, but one of the things they were doing is they were working under mind control in the 30s in Germany. And they realized how to start controlling people through their minds and getting them to do things that they necessarily didn't plan to do, and what's called MK Ultra. Okay, now CIA mind control programs that experienced on human subjects that were designed to identify and develop drugs. How many of you guys have ever looked into the LSD thing? You know what LSD is? It was created by the government. And so the counterculture that was going on out in the 60s, out in California, where do you think all that LSD drug was coming from? It was being implemented into the hippie culture by the CIA. And that's why you end up with all the goofballs like the Jim Joneses and the Charles Mansons and stuff like that. And so what they were doing was they were working on another great series that you can study on this. Netflix put out a video called Wormwood, and it was about a guy who was being treated or how's the word, experimented on, and didn't know he was being experimented on, which is what went down in our government. And this thing kind of went on. This is not hidden stuff. This is not, Corey, you're bringing up conspiracy theory. You can go and study about how black soldiers were being given syphilis by our own country during World War II and experimented on without their knowledge. And this was going on a regular basis. And so what was happening is they were doing this under their drugs and to use as interrogations in order to weaken the individual and force confessions through mind control. Project MK Ultra was first brought to the public's attention in 1975 by the Church Committee of the U.S. Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on the CIA activities within the United States. Investigative efforts were hampered by the fact that the CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MK Ultra files to be destroyed in 1973. So this is where, when we mention MK Ultra, the mainline sheeple run around and go, "Oh, that's just conspiracy theory." No, this is actually government-issued programs that were investigated by Congress. Okay, now this leads to Project Bluebird, or the development of the Manchurian Candidate, or CIA assassins. I put on here, AKA Jason Bourne. Now, if you've ever watched Bourne, you have an individual who was David Webb, but he was trained in such a way that he ended up becoming what they call an asset. And they would send these individuals in and literally kill people that they wanted taken out. And it was just one individual person that would be doing these programs. But if you watch the whole series and you find out, how did they start training him? Holding his head underwater, breaking him mentally. All these things go on, and they put them through training. This is what's known as the Manchurian Candidate, or what was called Project Bluebird. All right? Bluebird was approved by the CIA director on April 20th, 1950. In August of 1951, the project was renamed Artichoke. So it goes MK Ultra, it goes Bluebird, Artichoke, and you know what it's called now? Monarch, Project Monarch. Now, the reason I put back this up here, Treadstone, Blackbriar, and Iron Hand, is if you watch the series, Jason Bourne, in the first episode, it's Treadstone. By second episode, it's Blackberry, or Blackbriar, there you are, Blackberry, Blackbriar, whatever. And then it's Iron Hand in the last one. And what our government is famous for doing is going, "Oh, yeah, we used to have that program. MK Ultra, yeah, that used to go on, but we've done away with that." Well, of course you have, because you wrapped it up, gave it a new title, and now you're still doing it. All right? Now, this leads us into what's known as DID, or dissociation identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder, is a mental disorder characterized by at least two distinct personalities. Listen, we also call those wives, by the way, just as a side note. But for especially premenopausal wives. You got all kinds of personalities coming at you, and they come at you multiple per minute. You don't even know what you're dealing with, all right? Now, bottom line is, I'll hear about it tonight.
That's my other personality.
Yeah, that's the other personality that will deal with it. All right, so here's what goes on is what they do is there's often trouble remembering certain events beyond what would be explained in ordinary forgetfulness. DID, Emmy's not here tonight, is she? She learned about this in medical school because this is where we deal with bipolarism and different things like that. But what happens is, if we can traumatize an individual really when they're young, it will, for a lack of better terms, shatter the brain. And like shards of glass that are laying there, you can tell it used to be a mirror or a piece of glass. Now it's broken in separate pieces. And so what happens is we've learned to do that to the brain, and now we can work from this section of the brain and then through different commands move to this side of the brain and work from there. I'll give you one example. One of the ladies who was a whistleblower at this came out, and she was an assassin for the CIA for years. And what she did, she was a stay-at-home mom. She worked for them, and she would be sitting there cooking dinner, go to answer the phone, and a word was given to her that would switch her from the mom, stay-at-home mom mindset over to the assassin side. She would leave, go there, kill individuals, come back, they'd switch her back. Now she's back to being mom. And she didn't remember any of it. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing all this out is because when you look at Hollywood and you go, why would these people do this? The Diddies of the world and all those things. It's because of what they're doing to these people. And the hierarchy of this world is using these individuals as pawns. And really, to be honest with you, as a born-again believer, you have to feel sorry for these people. They're real human beings that Jesus Christ died for, and they've been destroyed. All right? Now, DID is believed to have caused due to childhood trauma. In about 90% of the cases, there is a history of abuse in the child, which is also brings in what's known as SRA, or satanic ritual abuse, where you abuse a child at a certain age for two reasons: shatter the brain, but to please their father, Satan. It is. I'm careful what I'm saying here because of them online, and nothing irritates me more than to have to do those studies. And so the few times in my life as a Christian where I've actually gotten upset at God is when I start down that rabbit hole, and I'm like, okay, God, why do you allow this? So here's the thing. While other cases are linked to experiences of war and health problems during childhood, genetic factors are also believed to play a role in it. That's why there's generally generational people that go through this. Now, people diagnosed with DID often report that they have experienced severe physical and sexual abuse, especially during early to mild childhood, sometimes connected to religious practices. If you ever study out the Mormon church, you're going to end up at this rabbit hole. Now, here's Bill, okay? Slick Willie. For those of you that say, what you're saying is all, conspiracy theory, it never happened. Here is Bill, when he is president, apologizing to the people.
This report I received today is a monumental document in more ways than one. But it is a very, very important piece of America's history, and it will shape America's future in ways that will make us a more honorable, more successful, and more ethical country. What this committee learned, I would like to review today with a little more detail than Dr. Faden said, because I think it must be engraved on our national memory. Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment, and that was wrong.
All right, so I'm not gonna play the whole thing for lack of time. I got 97 slides to get through, but you hear him admitting, this is the President of the United States, we did test on people without them knowing. Okay? In other words, we're doing stuff to them medical without their consent. Now, just a hypothetical question. Do you think that stuff stopped? No. Wonder what all's been experimented on us that we have no idea about. Now, this is your girl Roseanne, who's talking about Hollywood.
Is the media and entertainment responsible for perpetuating a rape culture?
Yeah, I think the media is responsible for perpetuating a rape culture. And, you know, I mean, it's profitable for the people at the top who run the rape culture, you know, who run it, and, you know, they profit from it, and to say otherwise would be a big fat lie. But so, you know, they don't want any kind of power shifted away from the way they have it set up in a very hierarchical manner with, you know, women's free labor at the bottom, largely slave labor, at the bottom of that big pyramid.
You've been a Hollywood insider for so long, yet you've been vocal for so long. I mean, how challenging is it to see your colleagues across Hollywood lacking for the Obama administration when they have so much power and influence that they could single-handedly shape the dialogue when so many people are watching them?
Well, I think that, you know, this is a culture of fear, and nobody's more afraid than people in Hollywood. They're afraid that they'll drop out of the top, you know. They're afraid that they'll drop from the bottom of the pyramid, maybe to the middle of the pyramid. But, you know, they're the ones, Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure and all this culture of racism and sexism and classism and genderism and all of it in place. They continually feed it, and they make a lot of money doing it. And they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything. So, you know, they're not going to get brave enough to do that. I mean, I think that there aren't many of us who are brave enough to do that. And I just, you know, I'm lucky that I can do it, and I feel that I do it on behalf of many people in Hollywood, too. I go to Hollywood parties, or, you know, occasionally I go to Oscar parties and things like that, and people, big stars, people will grab me by the arm and take me aside and say, I just want to thank you for the things you say. And it blows my mind, but that's the culture. It's a culture of fear for sure. You know, and it's a big culture of mind control too. MK Ultra mind control rules in Hollywood. If you don't know, Google that and look into it.
Well, we've talked about Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra mind control stuff from, I mean, this goes back decades and decades. But Roseanne, I mean...
So that gives you just another proof. This is not some crazy conspiracy theory. This is real stuff. And how many of you guys know who Jaguar is? Anybody know her? This is a lady, a young black lady who is exposing a lot of Hollywood, and I can't believe she's alive still. But if somebody is a star in Hollywood, they've been abused sexually and physically. It's the way it works. From the top down, that's how they control them. And it's not just the women, it's the men as well. And this has been going on in Hollywood. All right? Now, so in Jason Bourne, the second one, Pamela Landy's talking about Jason Bourne, and the director, I forget his name, said, his mind is broken, we broke it. Okay? By the way, Satan tells you exactly what he's doing if you'll listen. All right? Now check this out. If you have a broken mind, yes, you can switch from back and forth, but what happens is you have a shattered mind. Right? I wouldn't get into anybody's business, but if you were abused as a child, no matter what you go through, that's going to linger the rest of your life. You don't just get over that. As a matter of fact, we don't even teach that. We've never said, come to Christ and all that'll go away. No, come to Christ so that your eternity is great. We can't change your past, but your future can be great if you'll trust Christ. And we would teach you that Christ can help you through those things, but it doesn't go away. I mean, as a guy, I was never sexually or physically abused as a child, but being bounced from home to home as a little kid, mentally that messes you up. And it messes you up for life. And even though I know Christ, there's still lingering effects of those events. So sometimes these Hollywood people snap. Watch Al Roker here. I want you to watch, because Al hears a trigger word, and watch his eyes. If I can.
Alongside Matt Lauer and Al Roker. Was someone do the junior high high It's like this. We're gonna make it real awkward.
That's exactly how you have to have a certain amount of distance between the bodies
exactly.
in junior high.
Yes, like they say in Catholic school, leave room for the Holy Ghost. Anyway, there is a lot of memories today, actually. It's a big day in music history.
35 years ago today, Elvis Presley passed away, the king of rock and roll. And as Mark Cohn says in his great song, Walking in Memphis, there's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the jungle.
He doesn't blink. Now notice she said, leave room for the Holy Spirit. And as soon as she said Holy Spirit, boom, he locks out. Makes you wonder if something as a kid, he grew up in church, and right in that moment, he's locked out. Like his brain is shattered, and he went from Al Roker, the beloved weatherman, to a space inside of him he didn't know what to do with. A file, if you will. Now, here's another one. I want you to watch Brittany, because Brittany was absolutely abused. And by the way, somebody should have wrapped their hands around her father, okay? Because at the end of the day, Dad, that's our job, is to protect our family at all cost, whatever that cost is. And yet, putting your daughter out there to be a quote-unquote sex idol while she's a child, just for the money, I'd rather be poor. I'd rather live in a tent. At least I'd have my brain when I left here. Now watch her as she's being interviewed. And you're going to see her switch from one to the other.
And it all happens as she's starring as a kind of villain in the tabloid accounts of supposed jealous arguments and then a horrible breakup with her self-proclaimed first love, Justin Timberlake.
You've had a rough year. You've had a year that would test a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Illness in the family. Mm-hmm. A breakup. This spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It was pretty rough, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Watch it.
Weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strawberry. Yeah, it was a weird. Ew. That's coming.
You can hear the voice change, and she literally, you can watch the snap over when she started being flooded back to a different section of her brain, right? And this is a result of that. Here's another one I'm just throwing out tonight on what's called Operation Mockingbird. All this stuff you can actually go and test, and don't believe. I've always told you, whether I'm preaching from the Bible or if I'm teaching about stuff like this, never believe me. Always double check this stuff. But this is stuff you can go look at. It's called Operation Mockingbird. Was a full implemented CIA program to spread disinformation through American media. CIA Director William Colby testified to the Church Committee, that's back in the 70s, that over 400 CIA agents were active in the U.S. media to control what was reported through American mainstream television, newspaper, and magazines. This is in the 50s and the 60s. So when you say to me, well, that's not on mainstream media, okay, as though they tell the truth. You know, and all this stuff, that another one, if you want to look at, is Operation Northwoods. Right? They went to Kennedy and said, what we need to do is shoot down one of our own planes, killing Americans, blame it on the Cubans so that we can invade Cuba. Operation Northwoods. You mean our own American government attacking our own people so that we can get in a war? I think I've heard about that. Matter of fact, I think I've lived that. All right? Now, I won't say any more about that. But now, let's switch over and end this series on the X mark, since we're talking about symbolism. And we're talking about, you know, what symbols mean and how a mark is going to come to this planet, and wonder what that mark is. X marks the spot. You ever heard that? How about when we're going to write a little note, and we write XOXO. You remember doing that? It's been a few weeks. So now, yeah. So the XOXOXO. Wonder how that got to be hugs and kisses. And I wonder what the kiss means with the X. Now watch this. All right? I showed you this a few weeks ago, and about half of what he says I agree with. The other half, he doesn't know anything of what he's talking about. But here you go. We'll watch this guy explain the actual Greek text.
See that right there? That is the mark of the beast. So what you just saw is the oldest text of the book of Revelation, Apocalypse, right here. All you have to do is navigate to literally the Vatican Library, where they have the oldest known copy. It dates back to 400 AD, where Revelation chapter 13, the very last verse, is talking about the mark being 666. Actually, that's what it looks like right there in the Greek, the original Greek. And just in case you need a refresher, this is what the very last verse of chapter 13 of Revelation says. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take what we saw in the original manuscript, and I'm going to digitize it, make it look way... You see that right?
Okay, he's off on the rest of it, so I could care less. But I did want you to see how that in the Greek, it's the letter X when we're talking about the mark of the beast. Now watch, all right? Now, Revelation 13, 16, and 18. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. So it's either going to be in your right hand or it's going to be right here in your forehead. And it's a mark. And I'm telling you it's an X. But let's just watch and see. All right? He says, and that no man might buy or sell, or save he that have the mark or the name of the beast or the number. So there's three possibilities of what you could have on your forehead or in your arm. Now everybody comes in, they're like, well, it's got to be an RDFI, RFID, or whatever. What is it called? Yeah, there you go. They think it's some chip going in them. Well, you know, it may be. I'm just reading the Bible and taking it at face value until I can't take it at face value anymore. And he's saying, look, it's a mark, it's a name, it's a number of his name. And he says, listen, he says it's the number of the beast, which is 666, 666, right? All right, so let's understand this thing about X, all right? The theory is that the X signifies death, the journey into the ultimate unknown. Tex Mars says that it is used a symbol for the Egyptian deity Osiris, because you see, if in the Egyptian pyramids and temples, while we find pharaohs buried, their arms and the legs are crossed in a devotion towards the sun god. Okay, so when I was a kid, you used to see these old shows like a Western. Some guy died and they put him in a pine box, and they always showed him with his arms crossed. And if you look that up, many of them will say it goes back to the Chaldeans and all the way back, but it was a signifying of death. Matter of fact, we see this when a guy dies in a cartoon, his eyeballs turn to 2 circles and an X. He's dead, right? Right? And that's what he's saying. It is a tribute to the sun god, right, which would be Osiris, Nimrod. Now, the X connected to the idea has permeated, thank you, popular culture with its use in sayings like, cross my heart and hope to die, and in cartoons where the X are placed over the eyes of the dead character. Now, we always say that, cross my heart, hope to die. There's an X connected to death. This is the second time. Now, when somebody dies in the Catholic religion, what do? They come up there and do that whole Xing thing. Now they'll say, well, it's a cross. Well, hang on. On Ash Wednesday, what kicks off 40 days of weeping for Tammuz, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but that's what it is. They'll come in before a priest, and he'll take ash, and where does he put it? On their forehead. Now, remind me again where the 2 spots are? The hand or the forehead, and he makes an X right there on their forehead. Now remember, we're going to teach in Revelation 17, when we get there about 3 years from now, that the great whore of Revelation, the great whore of Mystery Babylon, is nothing more than the Catholic Church. And the head of that Catholic Church, as the Pope, is going to be the false prophet. And his job is to lead everybody in worship to the beast. Right? And right now, you see a prelude of it. Now, by the way, there is nothing Christian about that. Nothing. Matter of fact, it goes back to Nimrod, which is Osiris, which, pick whatever other name you want to fill in for him. Now, here's the thing. When Constantine, the first Catholic, that's their first pope. When Constantine is at the Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, and he's fighting to be Pontifex Maximus, he has some bad salami that night, has a dream, looks up, and sees this symbol, and he called it the cross of Christ. And so he goes out and he paints that cross on all of his shields and his horses, and it literally hears a voice that said, by this symbol you will conquer. Now, it wasn't God that told him that. It was the God of this world, which is the same God of this world, 2 Corinthians 4:4, that will be ruling here during the tribulation. Okay? Now, by what sign? By the X. So, we've studied this guy multiple times. This is your boy Aleister Crowley, Barbara Bush's dad. Now, when you check this guy out, he's the one who started the OTO, or the Order of the Eastern Templars. And he's the guy that got really into all the magic and all the witchcraft. And he's really the father of it modernly within Hollywood. Now, when he dies, the guy that takes over is a guy named Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant. And Kenneth Grant was an English ceremonial magician, and he was an advocate of what Crowley was doing. He's a poet, novelist, writer. He founded the Thelmanite organization, the TOTO, which is basically the offspring, and it's called the Typhonian Order, right? And he became he was the personal secretary of Aleister Crowley, the ceremonial magic, founded in Thelema, 1904. Crowley instructed Grant in the esoteric practices, initiating him in his own occult, ordered the OTO. When Crowley died in 1947, Grant was seen as his heir to the heir apparent in Britain. Right? So he writes a book called Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God. Now notice the X with the circle on the book, and then look at the Egyptian top to it. Now you know what that Egyptian man is indicating? Just as a side note, that's the firmament. study every ancient culture. That's a whole different study. Now watch. The book talks about the heart of nodes sigil is the same as the mark of the beast, a fusion of X and O, which is that right over there, what you're seeing in red, and produces the lightning flash from the depths. It is believed that this initiation, the establishment of the goddess, because the union of X and O is basically the female-male counterpart coming together. That's why you have the O and you have the X. XO is supposed to produce love, right? Okay, now watch this. Now, the reason why we see the X and the O so often in pop culture is because they believe that the fusion of X and O is the initiation of this goddess who will grant their wishes and desires as they are saying thanks for invoking her. This is what they believe. Now, at the top of Aleister Crowley's signal, or his signet, is an X and an O right at the top. You notice it? I want you to pay attention to it. It's very simple, but I want you to pay attention. All right? When they get in their seances, this is from Kenneth Grant, that's what they do. A circle with an X. All right? Now, so you have these tarot cards, okay? Now I want you to pay attention to this tarot card that he's got here. He's got, and you probably can't see it here, but you got an X and an O on the keys down here, and it's the number 5 card, or the V card. Now, 5 is the number in the Bible for what? Now be careful. Death. Everybody says, no, 5's the number of grace. It is the number of death in the Bible. You can study this constantly and see this. Now you say, well, I've seen places that 5 can be seen as grace. What's the number 1 rule of Bible study? Context. Okay? But overall, the number 5 is the number of death in the Bible. Now check this out, okay? But this card is connected, even the X and O is shaped in a V down here, and it's the 5th card, or the V card, and it's supposed to represent the authority in which a person makes confessions, as in secret society confessions, were initiated, reveals their most inner secrets. The card depicts the hermaphrodite. So this individual here is both male and female. It's not by happenstance that transgenderism is taking off right before the rapture. And if you understood who the Antichrist is and what Job says about him, the sinew of his stones are going to be tied. In other words, he's going to be one of them. All right, now watch. The card depicts, so we read that. Okay, so he's got both parts. You'll notice that he's using the V hand sign, that part right up here. He's doing the V for victory, which indicates middle finger. But notice the X and O in the symbolism. Now, remember we studied this guy, Winston Churchill, with the V for victory. He got the idea from Aleister Crowley, and how they came about was this V, which is connected to the 5th card, which is connected to the X and the O, which is connected to death, will override the German swastika. That's what their belief system was. Now, it ties in to Kabbalism. Now, I want you to notice in this Kabbalism that under Crowley, the abyss contained in the 11th, or hidden, what's known as Dath. Notice where Dath is, right here. So you have the V here. Notice the cross right in the center of it. And right here in the middle of it is death. So V, X, and O are tied together here. Watch here. The abyss is guarded by a demon, Corazon, who manifests during the 3rd ceremonial method of crossing the gulf, according to Grant. The god of this abyss is Typhon, that's why he calls his religion Typhonian. All right? It is the G path. 666 is the number of the abyss. And so this is what he's describing to you. Now, you remember this? The voice and the V? Now you're going to go, well, Corey, come on. It's just a show on America. After all, it's called The Voice, so to show up the peace sign, It's just a V for that, except when you start to understand that the people who own the voice, all right, is a Dutch-based company called Talpa Media Group, and this is their logo. And it's tied into Kabbalism. All right, now, Monster drink. How many of you morons drink that? Guys, you shouldn't be drinking any of that. But what's interesting about the Monster drink is the label here. The Monster drink, which is interesting because you got the symbolism that's involved in it, but do you understand that that symbol is a Hebrew symbol for the letter V? So it's Va, Va, Va. And every letter in the Hebrew language has a corresponding number. And Va's corresponding number is 6. And so Monster is 666. And you're drinking that garbage. All right? Now, here's another drink. How many of y'all drink this? I didn't even know this was a... Huh? That's because we drink water. All right? We got our own problems. All right? Now watch. Notice the circle with the X in it, named Demon. Now, here's your girl Madonna. Notice her stage. The M, she's going to tell you, oh, that's for Madonna. But then when you see the circle in the X, and notice what comes out of the X is the V. You got your V here, you got your X, and you got your circle. And remember, Kenneth Grant said the reason they do the circle and the X is to give thanks to who? The goddess. Now, who is that goddess? That's Isis. That's Ishtar. That's Semiramis. That's Nimrod's wife. Right? Now, here's the 5th season of The Walking Dead. Got an X and an O. Now, I've never seen that. To me, guys, just be honest with you, stuff like that's just trash. It's just, why do I want to watch this? Like, if I want to see zombies, I'll just go down to Atlanta. Right? Now, how about X-Files? Notice on all the logos of X-Files, the X with a circle around it every time. The X-Files. Now, what's the X-Files about? About aliens coming to this planet, right? We're studying aliens. Now, does Corey believe in aliens? Yes. But does he believe that there's some green Martian? No. They are fallen ones. They're part of that crew that left out with Satan. We deal with fallen angels and we deal with demonic spirits. They're two separate things, but we deal with both of those things. Now, Genesis 6 says that those fallen angels came to this planet and cohabitated with human women. The book of Daniel says that this is going to happen again because their seed is not going to mingle with the seeds of men. It's going to happen again. But you ever look at this verse? Luke 21:26, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. Project Bluebeam is another thing you can look up. You got a lot of projects, by the way. Be glad you got the summer off. So the bottom line is, the X-Files started taking off in the 90s. I'm convinced. Do you know when alien investigations really started taking off? 1947 was Roswell. What happened in 1948? Israel became a nation. You know what Jesus said about the group that would see that? He's coming back. So, now, the Calvinists are too dumb to believe in a rapture. But you know who isn't too dumb to believe in one? Satan. He has to figure out a way to tell the masses what happens when millions of us leave this planet simultaneously. So what is he? Oh, the aliens took him. Those were those bad people. And so the aliens who came to help us have removed them and gotten rid of those bad people. Now, Skull and Bones, okay? This is the Yale Skull and Bones. It's a secret society that President Bush's dad, President Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, which is not a good man, neither is George H. Bush. And before you throw a rock, I voted for all those guys, and it's shameful that I did. But either way, compared to the guys that had the options to vote for, yeah, you just throw a dart at that point. All right, now, so here is their circle with an X, and I won't get into the 322 right now, but you're talking about a major secret society right here. Now, how about your boy? You know who that is? Russell Brand. And Russell Brand is one of those guys here in the last couple years, everybody's like, oh no, he's a good dude, he's exposing some stuff. You need to understand what controlled opposition is, right? Now, this is his brand. It's a circle with an X. Circle with an X. All right? Here he is, circle with an X. All right? Kids' Choice Awards in 2015. Circle with an X. Now, you're going to say, Corey, that's because the game controllers. Yeah, why is that? Why is a game controller a circle and an X? You think it's just by happenstance that Satan is the god of this world and that whole Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, Xbox was just, you do what you want with that. The same way that God rules his kingdom, Satan rules his. All right? Now, this is a girl on Ariana Grande. She's running up the steps in this video called One Last Time. And there's this apocalyptic scene of a fiery end of our planet. But you'll notice that they ensure the mark of the beast was neatly hidden in the background. Here it is. Circle with an X. And by the way, even if you Christians don't believe it's the mark of the beast, Kenneth Grant and those that were part of the witchcraft do. All right, now watch. Xbox. Circle and an X. Here is X-Men, right? We all know what the X-Men are. It's Xavier, right? All right, I learned that from Sheldon Cooper. Now, watch this. We got an X and a circle on this ugly-looking dude. We got the circle and the X here, circle and the X, circle and the X, circle and the X, circle and the X. It's everywhere. All right? We have X-Men again. Circle and an X. All right? Got the circle and the X with the word destroy under it. Do you know what that word destroy would sound like in Greek? Apollyon. We translate Apollyon, another word, son of perdition. Man, you can't make this up. Every little spiderweb detail brings you back for God going, yeah, that's what they're doing. Satan, as I told you guys before, and we were talking about this last week when we left. If you understand Larry Bird was an unbelievable trash talker. He'd come down and tell you, I'm going to get the ball, take 2 dribbles, and I'm going to shoot off the glass in your face. And he'd come down and do it. And he got really good at doing it, and what gave him joy was to do it right in your face after telling you he was going to do it. And you know what Satan does? This is what we're doing. And most Christians are going, huh? And the world definitely doesn't know. Now, here's a Disney. Now check this out. This is Disney. This says, make your mark. And there's the circle and the X. Just as a little side note, Disney is absolutely demonic. It is demonic. And yet we go, I got to take them down there to Disney cruise. All right, now watch. 6, 6, 6. The number what? 13. Like, I mean, how much more do you want them to do? Here's your circle and X right back here in the dance off or whatever this thing is. All right? Now, X Games. The what games? The X Games. And the trophy or the little medallion they give you is an X with a circle around it. Notice the shirt he's wearing? Fox. All right? Now, 5 Seconds of Summer is I believe it's an Australian group. Now, it's interesting. They got an X in boxes over here, but their drum is an X with a circle on it. Beyonce, I showed this a few weeks ago. She had an album called XO. And remember, when you put the X and the O together, you're thinking the goddess Isis, which is who she tries to portray. How about John Mayer, who's got an X, and you go, wait a minute, that's a box here. Yeah, but if you look inside that X, that's a circle right there. All right? Here is Lily Allen's, like some of these people I had to look up, her album called Jesus, which I believe is probably a shot at Jesus, meaning a she, Jesus. And notice the I with an X, the circle with the X around it. Then, here's Miley Cyrus. She released a deranged video called Tongue Tied right before she started to really unravel. And notice what she has. X over both eyes. Here's Madonna with an X across her face right here, and her face would make the circle. But watch, Madonna has an album called Rebel Heart, which is interesting. Who is the first rebel? Nimrod. That's literally his name. All right? He's number 13. So she has a album called Rebel Heart with a song called Illuminati on it. Like, you can't make this up. They're telling you, they're screaming who they are. And what gets me is I could show 1,000 slides and people go, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Really? I mean, they're making it easy to be one. All right, now watch. All right, so she has an X over her face. Chris Brown had an album called X. Yeah, he's a real good piece of product to society. All right, Big Sean, okay, he has a thing called Complex, and now watch this, shows us the all-seeing eye and an X as he slowly is transforming into his occult ideologies, or ideas. Now watch this, notice the hands, the X deal, okay, it's the same thing, that whole skull and crossbones. Nebraska's defense, I hope they don't do it anymore because they stink, but back when they were great, their defense was known as the Black Shirts. And their sign for their defense was that X mark. And it literally is under the same ideology. Now, Ed Sheeran has an album called X. Emmy's got her senior picture with all her albums, and there's this X with Ed Sheeran. Got the mark of the beast sitting there, all right? Now, matter of fact, you might need this. I'd tell her to take it home, but she lives with my grandson. I don't want that trash around him, all right? Now, Ed Sheeran has that. Microsoft OS wasn't 10. You notice they never called it that? Now, when we got to iPhone X, you had the iPhone 8, the iPhone 9. I think they skipped 9, but they went iPhone 7, iPhone 8, iPhone X, and then they went iPhone 11. They skipped the whole, and everybody says, well, Corey, X means 10 as a Roman numeral. Okay, you didn't call the iPhone 5 the V. I mean, now, how about Hennessy? Everybody gets quiet like, oh my goodness. I'm going to sit here like I don't know what Hennessy is. They got an XO as their symbol. Once again, XO, let's thank the goddess. All right, here's your boy, Elon. Space X. What's the X stand for? I got one better for you. He bought Twitter and renamed it X, which is like the dumbest thing. Like, even to this day, people are like, hey, did you see that on X? And I go, X? Oh, you mean Twitter? Because it's going to be forever Twitter in my head. But it's interesting, his logo. Here is an alternative logo for X. X with a circle in it. I am all for Doge. I am all for cleaning out harmful waste in our government spending. But if you think Elon is here to help you, you have problems. No one is coming to help us. No one. The only one that's going to help us is the rapture. And just as another side note, he said, well, what is he waiting on? You and I. To get to work, to tell people about Christ so that he can rapture. Right now, he's holding back, long-suffering, and allowing other people to come in and get part of the family. Because you understand, when that rapture happens, the peace treaty deal goes down, and all of a sudden, boom, this world's in chaos. All right? Now, it's interesting that when you take the new Twitter logo and you put it it's what's called mirroring. We do this all the time in the awning business. We'll take a logo and reverse mirror it. And when you do it, you end up with the V and the X's, the double X's. It's the same as the Masonic thing. All right? So we'll end with this. How about the words that end in X? Now, I could literally do an hour on this. I'm just kind of giving you a few to think about. How about the word hex? All right? Notice that the word 666, do you understand the word 666 is hex, hex, hex? Remember I told you it's va, va, va. That's Hebrew. Greek is hex, hex, hex. Hex is the number 6. Okay? Now watch this. Oh, let me back up. There we go. Hexagram. Now, I don't have time to take you through that whole video. We're running out of time. But a hex, you ever heard of somebody getting a hex placed on them? It works through that symbolism. How about pax? You know what a pax means? When you look up, there's a thing called Paxis Romana. Okay? If you look up that Paxis Romana, it was known as the Golden Age. I'm saying that on purpose. The Golden Age of the Roman Empire. And it was a time of peace and prosperity. Trump's in the office yelling, we're having a golden age going to come here. We're going to have peace and prosperity. Hang with me. According to the book of Thessalonians, when peace and prosperity, when they have it, sudden destruction is going to hit them. The problem isn't peace. The problem is there's a false peace. All right, now watch. Revelation 6:2, when the Antichrist shows up on the scene, he shows up with a bow but no arrow. You know why? He's an emissary of peace. All right, watch this. Daniel said he by peace shall destroy many. It's literally the word destroy. The opposite of peace is destroy. Now watch, which brings us into Rex. Look at the word Rex. All right, which leads us into this guy again. The word Rex or crown is a king who comes and conquers, but it also carries the connotation of a kiss towards him. Now, it's interesting. What happens when people see the Pope? They bow and kiss the ring. There's a guy coming, and you better have something on your forehead. And that right hand's going to come involved. Now watch, not only that, lynx. You know what a lynx is? It's a cat. It's a type of jaguar. It's a type of leopard, if you will. It's a spotted cat. Do you know what the spots on a leopard look like? You ever have your wife kiss your collar and now she got lipstick on it? It literally looks like a pair of lips kissing. All right, and I don't have time to take you into that, but here it is. All right, now, Sphinx. You know the Sphinx? You know what a Sphinx is? Male, female. It's a Baphomet. All right? Now notice where the Sphinx is. That if from an aerial view of this Sphinx, there's an X, X, X. All right? Which is Baphomet. All right? How about crux? Crux is a cross, right? What did God say about a cross? Cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. Now, I'll give you another one. The sign of the cross. They always hold them up to the devil, right? Right? Now, do you know we have never been taught to display the cross? We've been taught we preach the cross. We bear the cross. We don't use it as a symbol. How about the word vex? All right? The Bible says in Acts 5:6 that they were vexed with unclean spirits. All right? How about the word jinx? All right? All right, that's the wrong one. Box. Now, all of these things, by the way, that box is that cube that they do. Sex. You literally could go down the list of all the letter X's. Now, there's probably nothing to it. It's just interesting. All these words that end in X always have a negative connotation when it comes to people. Because the letter X is coming to this planet on a major scale. I'm out of time, so we will pick this. We will not pick this up. We will see you at the end of summer.